So I hope you guys like the film, and now we're going to start the Q&A. And I thought that I would ask the first question, maybe to break the ice a little bit, but I'm hoping that you guys have a lot of questions for Raymond. So I think that it's very clear from the film that it was shot with a lot of love and passion. And you spent a whole year traveling around the country, and you interviewed numerous artists, numerous musicians. So I would imagine that the most fun part in creating a documentary like this is to actually going to all of these shows and meeting all of these musicians. So I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about this experience.
Yeah, you know, growing up, these bands, you know, Fishbone, Bad Brains, Living Color, you know, they were like my Justice League, you know, my X-Men. So they were like heroes to me. So having an opportunity to travel around with them and hang out and actually become close with them, that was, you know, I can't even put that into words. You know, just imagine, I don't know who you guys listen to. Who is it? Is it Justin Bieber? But just imagine, who's a Justin Bieber fan? No one's gonna raise their hand? Oh, okay. Or okay, or Dua Lipa or something. Let's just say it's one of those, and then like 10 years later or 20 years later, you're kind of like hanging out, having coffee, or, you know, having dinner with Dua Lipa, and like, you know, she's calling you and you guys compliment. It would be similar to that, you know, like, wow, yeah. So the process is, you know, still amazes me, like looking at it. I mean, this is my first time watching it in a couple of years, and I'm like, wow, getting goosebumps. Yeah. Hope I answered that question.
Yeah. No, I just imagined that it was a lot of fun, actually, to shoot this film.
I mean, rock and roll. I mean, you know, you saw everything that goes on backstage that you that you read about, and there are a lot of things that, of course, I did not include in the film because I'm not that type of person. But yeah, it was you know, being able to kind of like, what did they say, like fly on the wall. You know, you could see everything, and the realities as well. I mean, like a lot of some of the fame and whatnot is not what it's all cracked up to be. I mean, you see like the real side to some of these musicians. You know, like they're actual people. So, and they have lives, they have families, and they have the same type of problems that we all do. So, that was something else as well.
So, do you guys have any questions? Yes, there's a question. Cecilia, you think you could? If you could ask, or the microphone. Yeah.
This is the microphone.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking to.
No worries. Who was it? Oh, we got away. Just for a second. Sorry. All the way on. No worries.
Okay.
This is weird. I was like, I can project. I guess my question was, what was the process like for you in the research for it? Because I know that in the beginning it was giving us a lot of the time periods like the 60s and 70s, which was the pinnacle part of the Black arts movement, and just kind of that like the gentrification and the process of like understanding that like so many of the basis of our music industries, also like rock and roll and jazz, just kind of got not whitewashed, but moved into a different kind of genre in a way. And I guess my question is like, how was it researching and the process of like just kind of understanding what they were saying and like taking it into the film?
Well, you know, being I guess a director of color, you know, I understood it immediately, I mean, already.
Yeah.
I think, you know, just through the research, it just kind of, you know, nailed some points. I guess it was still a little disheartening because I guess you asked the question why it happened and why it still continues to happen. But I think from talking to the artist and the music, you know, journalists and historians helped bring clarity to some of that. Yeah. But you know, for me, the question I always asked myself prior to doing this film, and the reason I did the film, was why didn't these bands have the same opportunities as their contemporaries? You know, and I think I was at this, I think it was a Jeep Music Fest, and Sheryl Crow was the headline, and Ziggy Marley played, and his set was met with, you know, modest enthusiasm, but another band followed him. I think they're called O-A-R, I believe, and they're like this watered down reggae college band, and everybody was like going crazy for them. I'm like, what is this? And I mean, when I say the music was watered down, I mean, it wasn't real. It was kind of like UB40, comparing that to Jimmy Cliff or Bob Marley, right? And it was like more commercialized and more gentrified, I guess. And so I was like, wow, where's the disconnect with that? Why is that more accepted? And so that kind of like, ding, you know, because when you talk of Fishbone, you kind of have to mention a band like, who I love, of course, Red Hot Chili Peppers. They used to open for Fishbone, and they kind of had the same type of theatrics, and they just kind of got the better, I guess, avenue, so to speak. So I don't know. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, my man.
No worries.
So kind of bouncing off of that, one of the things that I kind of latched onto was what Vernon Reid and Questlove were talking about, which was kind of how black rock is advertised, how they get kind of boxed into your funk, you know, your reggae, your ska. Do you think there have been strides in the current day to pushing them out to just being like what they are, it's black rock, or do you think it's still very much like, listen, you are funk inspired, black, you know, rock and roll, or that they don't advertise it just as black rock, that they have to be in one of these boxes, or do you think it's still very much they're still in the box, or else they don't get to grow further?
You know, it's interesting because I think when you look at someone like Leon Bridges, I mean, what is he categorized as? You know, is he blues? Is he soul R&B? It's kind of weird because I think he's like the closest thing right now. I would have to say that the word would probably be alternative, and I think that's the safe word. You know, like when you think alternative, you're thinking, okay, this particular artist plays everything, and that's, I guess, the marketable term that they're using. It's unfortunate because I'll give you an example, like Seal. When Seal first came out, I worked at a record store in college, and he did a record release for the actual first Seal album, and at that time, no one had seen him. He performed the song Killer, was part of, I think, the group Adamski, or like this techno band, and so that his voice was all you heard. We never saw him, and so at the record release, it was at the Omni Hotel in Houston. I was there, and there was like this 6'5" black guy with dreads, and you know, we were the only black guys there, and like we were talking, I was like, hey man, I didn't even know that was Seal until maybe 30 minutes later. I'm like, oh, there he is right there. I'm like, what? And his first album, if you haven't heard it, it's all over the place. It's alternative pop, it's folk, it's techno, it's little funk, right? And for whatever reason, his label decided to market him more towards adult contemporary R&B, which is so sad because he was kind of like, I felt like he was a chameleon on that. If you don't believe me, just kind of go on Tidal or whatever, listen to that first one. It's all over the place musically and it's beautiful, but for whatever reason, they kind of shifted him more towards this grand old soul balladeer type, and I felt like that really affected him, you know, his ability to kind of like really do something special. He's still special, but I mean, he could have done way more. He could have been like what U2 was allowed to be, I guess, if that makes sense. You guys know who U2 is? Okay, I just want to make sure. Music has changed, okay.
Yeah, there is a question.
Hi. So I just wanted to ask, why do you think is that black people ourselves, we don't really support rock and roll? Because I noticed that you used Leon Bridges and Seal as an examples, and how they're kind of all over the place, which is something that I like. But I know a lot of black people, they feel if you're not in one thing like just R&B, rap, or anything like that, and you're outside of that, they don't really care for it. And then even then, if you just venture out, it's not accepted. I guess one person I can think of that's done a little bit of everything is Beyonce, and I think she's one of the very few people that is accepted to be able to do those other things like that.
Are you saying in terms of the black community, why the black community doesn't accept? I think it's kind of like what they were talking about in Electric Purgatory, how it's marketed. If things are marketed more towards white audiences, black people are kind of like, oh, well, it's not cool anymore. We don't want to, we don't want to be associated with that. It's like we want our own thing, I guess, in a sense. Because I know coming up in my house, my parents listened to a lot of the, Isaac Hayes and Sly Stone, but no Jimi Hendrix. And I remember distinctly asking my mom, hey, how come we don't have any Jimi Hendrix in the house? And her response, oh, he plays white music and he's into drugs. That was her response, and I think there's this stigma where rock is not ours. And that's kind of like what was my whole purpose, in a sense, hey, we have to kind of define what rock is and where it came from, and understand that it originated in black culture. And so through that, having that understanding, maybe we can have more artists that say, hey, you know what, let's celebrate this, because it's ours, right? And I think you mentioned Beyonce. It's interesting because I think, I think her name is Her. Is that her? She's doing some really nice things. There's so many, I call them alternative because I don't really think they're necessarily R&B. At least that's how they're not marketed. But who's the other one? She played with Prince. She was in Moonlight. Help me out. It'll come to me in a second. She had a really nice Grace Jones funk alternative vibe that was refreshing. I just think we need more of that. Aaliyah was kind of shifting towards that before she died, I think. I think she was trying to experiment with other sounds before she died. But I hope I answered the question. I mean, I think that's kind of what it is. It's like when things are marketed a certain way, black community responds the way they do. That's my opinion. I don't base that on fact.
Can I ask one more question? Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
You talked about the marketing part of that, but I think that a lot of people I'll use Adele for example. I know a lot of people just like Adele just because. I don't know anybody that truly just hates Adele, and I know a lot of black people, especially I know gang members that listen to Adele, Hello, and stuff like that.
Did you say gang members?
Yes.
Jeez.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
And so I think that's interesting how they're okay with listening to Adele, but then not listening to our own people. But that's.
Trust me, I think it's the way Adele is marketed. It's kind of you kind of struck on something. Adele is kind of marketed as the cool chick that has black friends that kind of rubbed off when she's she's a genuine soul being. Another person that's I will fight someone over, who has a lot of soul, is George Michael. Rest in peace. That guy, his first album, It won like best R&B album. I mean, George Michael he was for real. I don't know if you guys remember George Michael. Anybody? Okay. Yes. So in cases like that, I feel like there's certain white artists that they are okay to kind of be on this side and be considered like the cool, they're all right, and not, I wouldn't put Justin Bieber in that category. Or Justin Timberlake. I would not. I don't think, there has to be an authenticity. And so I feel like Adele is definitely authentic. Some of the others, not so much.
Thank you.
There are 2 questions here in front.
There's a third one right next to me as well.
Sorry.
I just knocked over a drink. I'm so sorry.
I can't see. I'm sorry.
I'm attempting.
Now I see the
Thank
artist
you,
feel like,
Microphone Ninja. Appreciate you. So my question is, what was the most difficult or challenging part of just producing this documentary? And in hindsight, what are some things you would do differently?
The most challenging aspect was the money. I didn't have any. Still don't. And I think with filmmakers today, that's the, you read about, Robert Rodriguez, donating blood and, people getting funding and whatnot. Everybody has a different story, but it's really difficult raising money. I tried, and in fact, there were like all these grants that I applied for. There was one grant in Texas that were given like $10,000 finishing funds. I submitted like a rough cut of this, and I think she was like 13 years old. It was like some 13-year-old girl. She was a filmmaker. She had a zombie movie that they funded. It was a short. It wasn't even a full feature. It was just like a 10-minute short, and they gave her the money. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'll just, take out my teacher retirement, because at the time I was teaching, and I had quit to do this to kind of get the film going, because no one else was going to fund it. It was like black musicians playing rock. It was almost like it was too militant. Black people didn't want to fund it because they felt like, they didn't really care. And then, on the other side, it was kind of like, well, you need to change some aspects of the story. We need to see more of the behind the scenes, like the drug abuses and the pitfalls. And I didn't want to show that. I didn't want to do the old Hollywood of, they've hit rock bottom type of deal. This is why they didn't make it. No, that's not why they didn't make it. You know the reason why. So the money aspect was tough, because getting all the music cleared, the Saturday Night Live footage, that was a lot. That if I had to do it all over again, I think today I probably would have tried to be a little bit more media savvy when I first started out, to try to build more of a following. When I did this, I think this was when MySpace, you guys know what MySpace is?
Yes, yes.
That was kind of like how we communicated, like, it's a, hey, got this thing. And this is this was before Facebook as well. So I think the avenues are a little bit, it's out there. I know you still have the Indigo, is it Indiegogo?
Yes, Indiegogo.
You still have that, but I think I would have tried to establish that first before I even shot anything, because it was really difficult. I mean, the clearances were tough for this. And luckily for me, I wasn't a threat, I guess, because Sony is very difficult to work with, according to a lot of other artists, in terms of licensing, but they were really cool with me, let me use photos and the music at a reasonable price. So I was fortunate in that regard, but today, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably, before I would even lens, get the money for the rights first. That would be key. And I think it might be easier. Say, hey, look, when you tell investors, hey, Sony is requiring $10,000 for 1 minute of Saturday Night Live footage, whatnot. You know, people with the money are like, okay, well that sounds about right. You know, you're not trying to pocket anything. Okay, so are you aspiring filmmaker, I presume?
Oh, yes, I am a filmmaker, and I
Yeah.
teach also.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you.
No,
My bad.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Yes.
And I think Janelle Monáe was the person you were
That's
looking
it. Thank
for.
you,
Yes.
Janelle Monáe. Thank you. Thank you. God, it's hell getting old. Janelle Monáe. Yeah, she's like, she's on that alternative spectrum as well. Like, I don't even think they have her classified as R&B. But I don't even think. Do black people listen to Janelle Monáe? Because
I do, and my sisters do.
Okay.
I would say, yeah. I think black women do. I don't know about black men.
And I think, again,
know-
that goes to
yeah,
marketing.
so I don't
I
know.
feel like they haven't really marketed her.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen her play Essence Festival or any of these festivals that could really, like, you would think that would have the same, like, appeal like Mary J. Blige, you know? Like, I don't see her in that same realm. And I don't know why that is, because I think she's excellent.
Yeah, I don't know why either. So.
Yeah.
Other than what you just recounted, can you think of any other ways that making this presented obstacles, or being a filmmaker in this space has presented obstacles that may have been similar to the artists that you interviewed, or ways that you can sympathize, and how did that affect your teaching style?
My teaching style, like in the classroom with my film kids. Okay, let me see if I can press it. Okay, so one of the biggest disappointments for me when I was trying to push this out, we got rejected by BET, which is Black Entertainment Television. And I believe the feedback was, you know, it didn't appeal to black audiences, something along those lines. And you can do two things. You can say, well, you know what, fine, I can bury my head in the sand, or I can just find other ways of getting this done. And so that's what I did. You know, I just said, you know what, I'll go where it's wanted and put it out, and not worry about MTV. VH1 was another one. They wanted it and never heard back from them. And then they had some of my, well, they weren't my archival footage, but they licensed some of the same footage for like one of their documentaries and whatnot. Ovation, it was interesting. They contacted me. Does anyone know Ovation Network? Are they still on? I don't know. Well, they're like a subsidiary of, I want to say they were VH1, not sure. But they picked it up, it broadcast on that, and we were a part of, I think it was it was like some kind of black music fest in June, where they showed my film, they showed, I think it was Stax or another film, and it got a lot of, you know, we did really well with that, okay. As it relates to my film students, what I teach them in terms of the business, my thing is this: you have two choices. One, you're not going to like in terms of, hey, if you want to be a filmmaker, you got to make a superhero movie. You have to make a movie that people want to see. That's if you want to make money, you know, go that route. But I'm like, look, make what you want to make. Don't worry about the other stuff. Don't worry about making the money. Worry about putting your work out there. Somebody is going to see it. Might not be here. Could be in Singapore. Could be somewhere in Europe. Don't know. Just make the movie you want to make, and everything else will work out. I mean, like, you have to define what success is. Is success making $1 million? Or is it getting exposure and more opportunities to make content that you want to create? You see what I'm saying? I think a lot of musicians make those hard choices. where they say, hey, look, we want you to make this type of music. And they're like, well, I kind of want to make my music. One of my favorite bands. How many people have heard of Krungbin? Anybody? Krungbin? Nobody? Jesus. Okay, you guys, okay. They're a band out of Houston, but they're like a funk, trip hop type of sound. Very, loungy, groovy. They're doing what they want to do. And they're playing all over the world, okay? Are they selling millions of records? No. But guess what? Nobody is, right? So I think that the key is to make what you want to make, and everything else will fall into place. And just define what success is to you. Is it just to show it in a theater like this? Is it to have it on television? Is it to have it on Netflix? It's not always about the money. You see what I'm saying? It's building. Building. I hope I answered that. Okay.
Basically, what I was wanting to ask is, so you kind of mentioned before in the film, a lot of it had to do with controlling like the marketing and the narrative. And so a lot of it, I feel like without social media, which we have now, it was so easy for those big industries to control the complete visual and interpretation of the music. And so what I was thinking is, do you think it should, in a sense, be better now because of the fact that there's so many social media platforms that an individual can create their own platform, even like a YouTube channel, and do their style of music, and then at that point, that's when you just do like the door-to-door marketing where it's just like, hey, listen to this, and that's one of the things where I feel like was so easy for a lot of great talents to just not be successful, was because of the lack of control of their narrative, or the lack of control of them basically being seen. And I feel like, and again, I was more wanting like your your opinion on it was the fact that whether you think if there was social media back then in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that is how it is now, do you think they would have had a better opportunity to be so much more successful?
Social media can be a slippery slope because on the positive, you definitely have more exposure. Or let me just say this, there's the potential of more exposure. It's just like having something on Amazon. Let's say you make a book, you write a book and you put it on Amazon. Well, how do you get people to see your book or buy your book, right? There's still a marketing component, and that's where a lot of these artists get lost still. Because even today, with the big name artist, they're kind of like a brand in a sense. So it's like they're a known entity. New artists kind of need that push. And so you can have X amount of viewers, likes, whatever, on all your social media pages, but you still need that other push, I guess, to kind of like get through. And I mentioned Leon Bridges. I mean, it's like someone had to see him, and they said, hey, you know what? We want you to open up at the Houston Rodeo. And through that, he was able to kind of like get in. You see what I'm saying? But so it does create opportunities, yes and no. Some of it's just blind, stupid luck. I hate to say it. It's not necessarily talent. It's just, I'm sure there are a million Dua Lipas out there, and it just happened to be her time. I mean, I know that's a shallow response, but it's like, it's true. It's like, she's not the most talented, but she got in at the right time. And the social media component is like, hey, yeah, I have a band, we're on, no, not me having a band, I'm just saying, if I had a band, yeah, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on whatever. You still need the machine to kind of like help you, is what I'm saying. Whether they sign you, whether they're helping, book you at a festival, whatever. You still kind of need that if you're going to break through. Otherwise, you're just kind of limited appeal, I guess. And as it relates to the bands in the 70s, you know, they were part of the machine. You know, I think they really determined who made it. You know, like, and they put you in the categories. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, you guys are young, but I remember in the 70s on radio, you could listen to Queen, Elton John, Blondie, Funkadelic, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, all on the same, you know, radio. You know, another one bites the dust. How many Queen Queen? Anybody? Yeah. They played that on black radio. I mean, like the 70s was a really fun time, but it all kind of like shifted where they started like saying, okay, well, we need to, you know, have all these categories. And when you would go into record stores, the pop sections would always be the ones that are highlighted. The pop and rock were always like on the end caps, front and center. R&B, maybe 1 or 2 racks. You know, reggae, maybe half a rack. You know, so the marketing push was always towards the rock and pop, you know, categories. Mike Ninja.
No, I'm coming. You can call me Michael.
Thank you, my Mike Ninja. So I have 2 questions. First one, when you submitted the film to BET, was it after they were bought out by Viacom?
I believe this was before.
Before, okay.
And again, you know, we had some positive dialogue up front initially, but then it kind of shifted like, well, you know, it's not the type of product we want, which was really disappointing because, you know, for me, I wanted, you know, I'm not going to say I made this specifically for black audiences, but I definitely wanted black audiences to kind of see this and understand. And I kind of had this idea of doing all these like HBCU tours, and we did play at Morehouse and had like a concert there, and that was great. But yeah, they just, I don't know if that had something to do with it. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay. And then my second question, what was your process when you were like pitching it to these different networks and different places? Like how were you, I guess, starting the dialogue with these platforms?
You know, I did the festivals, and I would send press kits to networks, and you know, they were, you know, for the most part, they were receptive, but you know, a lot of the networks require a certain amount of money in terms of budget. You know, like they want certain productions. I think they have this formula where they ask what the budget is, and if it's under a certain level, they don't want to deal with it because they call it like I know Netflix does it now, like where there's this production value thing.
Yeah, the quality control.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was an issue, of course. But I felt under the circumstances we did really well. You know, considering all things considered, I'm pleased. We talk about successes. I mean, if you're on Netflix, if you're on a broadcast network, that's a win for me, regardless of money.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to assume here that you had a goal whilst creating the film. At what point in creating the film did you start thinking, I'm reaching my goal?
I think I was kind of like in a fog creating it because it was the first time I actually used Final Cut. I had to like kind of teach myself, and it was kind of out of necessity because the individual that I wanted to edit was kind of like trying to charge a lot of money. He was like, hey, well, you know, so okay, you know what, I'm gonna just go ahead and do it myself. I think it wasn't until we got accepted into, I think we got into the Documentary Film Festival of New Zealand, is when I said, wait a minute, they're digging this in New Zealand. And then it was Singapore. I got rejected by the American Black Film Festival in Miami, which was really upsetting. But that's okay because Turks and Caicos, we got that with Jasmine Guy. But I think once I got into the first festival, it became real, because then I'm like, wait a minute, somebody appreciated it, and there's a chance. And so I did some re-editing, because the feedback was, I got the feedback, and according to the feedback, I said, okay, let me do this and that. So I think it was once we got the first initial acceptance. And that's the other thing, is like, if you've made a film, I would send it out to everything. Is it film? Is it Film Freeway? What is everybody? Is that okay?
That's the one based out of Canada.
Yeah, and after New Zealand and Singapore, you were actually invited to Heatwave Media and Film Festival.
Yes. Hey, let me tell you, I'm glad to be here. Thank you again. Thank you. But I was going to say, like, I have my film students, they have to submit everything to, like, Film Freeway. It's like the first in class. Make an account. That's what we're going to do. Everything you do, you're going to submit. But yeah, that was when something went off there.
Excellent.
Good questions, by the way, and great festival. Thank you again.
So when I was watching the movie, like, there's definitely throughout there's tones of, like, politics. There's a lot of politically charged stuff in there, especially when you, again, like, off the top of my head, it's Questlove is who I think of as a political figure, who's done, like, so much for black hip hop in general, with the roots being very politically charged, and then of course mentioning, like, Zach De La Roche, that's very very left, and I was wondering, was there maybe at times did you have to, like, maybe rein them back a little, like, bring the message to more mainstream, or was there maybe even, like, a political, like, did you ever want to go harder into the political message in some areas, maybe have a chapter included on the politics of, like, black rock and black music, or was it always more of, like, an undertone throughout the film?
Yeah. I had to cut some things. Doing this documentary, it didn't even feel like I was interviewing. It was like I was having a conversation with my brothers. And Questlove, to this day, I love him to death, because he wasn't even originally a target. I mean, I wanted him, of course, but the connect I had was with Cody Chestnut. And we met in Austin. It was so funny because it was just me and my producer, Mark Newsom. We just were waiting by the tour bus, and his manager kind of looked like you, he really did. I don't know. Came out and he saw us and he's like, Cody is not available. I don't think he's gonna. I was like, what? So we drove all the way up here from Houston to get him. I don't know. And so we were like about to punch him and do all kind of things that we should. Here comes Cody, and he sees these two brothers with cameras. And he's like, hey, what y'all doing? I said, oh man, we're trying to interview you, man. We had this all set up, but your guy over here is tripping. Come on, man. He took us in. He's like, hey, look. We're gonna do the show, and then backstage you're gonna get me, yada yada. Cool. So we're waiting for Cody backstage, and here comes Questlove. So of course, at that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity and say, hey, look, all he can do is say no. I'm gonna shoot my shot. And he was really cool. He was like really cool. He was like, man, no problem. I'll talk about this all day. So I love Questlove because I feel like he added a little bit of spice to the proceedings. And this was like right before their whole. They were in the same. It's interesting because they had a similar story, because people don't realize the Roots were a really underground hip hop group, right? That never really kind of broke the threshold, and they got a lot of criticism for doing the Jimmy Fallon thing. But from a business standpoint, it was genius, because it's like, hey, the industry's changing, and we're going to have constant work. We don't care about selling millions of records now. We just want to, have a steady gig, and there's nothing more steadier than like the Tonight Show. And so they've been doing it, like 10 years? Is it 10? It's been quite a while, right? So they kind of like, it changed their whole career trajectory, just that decision. Because if they didn't do the Tonight Show, I don't even know where they'd be. They could be just like Fishbone, talking about how, well, they wanted The Weeknd, they wanted, this type of sound. I can't even name any rappers. Drake, I don't know. So I'm happy for them. I'm happy for their success, definitely.
Any final questions? So maybe for me, the final question, following up on what you just said. So this film came out in 2005, and if you had to like shoot a sequel, like who would be those artists who you would interview today?
So here's the thing, you know, I got contacted by Prince's people, I want to say in 2009. I thought it was a joke. I was coming back from the dentist and they're like, hey, Prince saw the movie, he loved it, he wants to put together a tour where he was going to headline, and it was going to be Fishbone, Bad Brains, Living Color, and they were just going to go all over. And I'm like, let's do it. And then I was like, hey, we can do this Netflix thing. We can like film behind the scenes, this and that. So that was going to be the next one. That was going to be the sequel. And two things. Number one, I was always Prince guy. Okay, I don't know if you could tell watching the documentary, but the fact that he liked it, that was a win. We talk about wins. Forget the money. The hero, the man, loved the film. So I got it. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter. He wanted to do a tour based on it, okay? So that was gonna be the sequel. When he died, it was like everything, it like fell apart. I went to a deep depression behind that because it's like, you're so close. We had all this dialogue for like years. I think he was doing the Third Eye Girl. They would say, oh, he still wants to do it, just, you know, sit tight. Then he did the piano and the microphone tour, and they're like, oh, he hasn't forgotten about you, sit tight. And then he died, you know. So that was gonna be the sequel. We were trying to, you know, get through that, but, you know, if I could do it today, of course I'd want Lenny Kravitz. I'd want Sananda Maitreya, who used to be known as Terrence Trent D'Arby. And, you know, I'd probably, who else? Wow. I'd probably want to do Leon Bridges. And there's another gentleman out of Austin, help me out, with the hat, plays guitar. He's really popular. Come on, guys. Nobody? It'll hit me as soon as we leave out. It'll hit me. Real tall guy, skinny, wears the hat all the time. He was like, I think, in the Super Bowl too. Can't remember him? Okay. Yes. Definitely Lenny Kravitz. Who'd you say? A couple of years ago. Anyway, definitely Lenny, because I feel like it's interesting with Lenny Kravitz is his career could have ended up like Terrence Trent D'Arby, where, you know, they could have shifted him more towards soul. But I think he had a couple of things going for him. He used that kind of like male machismo and fashion to kind of get a foot in the mainstream. I think, because I think designers were like giving him clothes for a video, and I think that's kind of like what helped him, because they weren't taking him, for whatever reason, they never took him serious as an artist until like the third, I think it was Circus. That's when they really said, hey, this guy's, he's onto something. So I definitely would love to, you know, hear his story. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Prince at a music festival in Hungary before he died, so I was really happy that I caught that show. Yeah.
Lucky you, yes. Was it the piano and microphone? Yeah. Or oh, nice.
All right. If you guys don't have any more questions, can't really see. Then thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much to Raymond for answering all of your questions. And before you leave, I just wanted to tell you that hopefully there is pizza outside, so please feel free to take a slice, and please feel free to take some photos in front of the Heatwave Media and Film Festival backdrop. And don't forget that we have some other events coming up, so don't forget to check out the Heatwave events calendar, and I'm hoping that I will see you guys at the other events too. Thank you.
Thank you.